Thank you for coming to be with us. You're not going into trance, are you?
Not at all. No.
Oh, that's right. You're just meditating. Oh, good. Anyway, perhaps you'll be kind enough
Thank you
to
very much. Thank you. Does this work? Do I need it? Can you hear me all right? Good afternoon. Yes, how very nice it is to see you, and I do hope that you've had a very good week. I must say that at the end of this particular week, London week, everyone always goes away exhausted. You seem to be on all the time, and I do hope that you won't fall asleep if you've been very busy this morning, that you won't go to sleep, because you'll probably miss a marvellous lecture if you do. And, I'd hate to sort of have to remind you that you haven't missed one. May I first of all I thought it was a materialized form, actually, and I didn't come. May I first of all say that as far as the development which I believe you are doing this week, I do hope that I don't tread on people's corns in any way, from what I say. I do hope not. I haven't been to listen to the lectures that you've had. But don't forget that all of us must speak only from experience, and what is the experience of one is not always the experience of everybody else. Information with regard to spiritualism must come from the people that have made a study of it, and also from mediums who are able to tell us a great deal about what it's all about. The first thing that we have to keep in our minds is that spiritualism, first of all, tells us about God and what God is, and how God is the makeup of God. So it does tell us about God. Therefore, there is the religious aspect of our movement. But also, it tells us a great deal about ourselves personally. Where in the past we probably considered ourselves to just be a body, now we realize that we are more than a body, and that we were in being before we had our body. Now, it doesn't mean to say I'm teaching reincarnation, but I do know from facts that the soul of people is there before we come to the earth. Experience over many years and communication with various people in the other world has led me to believe that. And I'm quite sure that other mediums have experienced the same thing. So what we have to try and understand is that before we were a body, we were spirit, and we certainly had a soul, and we have a soul. Now, those things we learn as we go along with our communications, especially when we're touching children, especially stillborn children, and children that are born handicapped, and various things like that. We learn a great deal through communication with mediums. And following it through, we find that the soul is coming long before the parents know. Many predictions that have been given. If you read the Bible, and people that have had predictions that go to mediums, very often it's predicted that they will have 3 children, 4 children, but one will stand out as doing a particular work. So it is known of their coming. Now, if it is known, it must be known by somebody. Not by us, because very often even the parents haven't even come together at that particular period. So that we begin to realize that there is some divine order to life, and that there is an intelligence that is outside ourselves, that is able to advise and to bring about creation itself. So all these things do come into it. So we don't have to look upon spiritualism as something that is to do only with messages and running to mediums for your private sittings. It is very much more than that. because there is a spiritual implication attached to it, and there is also being able to find out a purpose to our own life. Many people don't investigate that. They tend only to want to know the things that are to come that matter in their life, rather than the real matter, and that is where we're going from here. And we don't. We tend sometimes to draw the curtain and very often say, oh, well, I'll wait until it comes. And look at the lives, miserable mess we get ourselves in by thinking like that. So spiritualism, first of all, does give you a future. So we then have to realize that mediums are there to involve us with the future. But then we must not mistake the future onto a spiritual level as the future that we want mediums to do, to tell us how to live our life. We're here to live it and to have the responsibility to live it. But we have to be given a purpose. Because when we come to this earth, ladies and gentlemen, we come with a purpose. And the idea is to find out what that purpose really is, so that mediums should be used correctly and properly onto the spiritual level rather than onto the psychic or to the material level. Which now brings me to the real point that I want to put across to you. And that is the difference between the psychic and the medium. I just happened to just pick up the, I don't buy it, the Psychic News. I pinch anybody else's to read it and put it back. So I usually don't buy it. So I picked on it, and I noticed that someone named Fox, I think, has written something in. I noticed that my name was there, so I thought, oh, I wonder what he's saying, you know. And you don't know whether it's good or bad. And it so happened that he stressed the point that a while ago that I attacked the two Dorises. Well, he's got that wrong, because I didn't attack them. I just gave facts. There was no need to attack. And I didn't attack. What I was asked, the question, was by the reporter that happened to a Derby meeting. He said 6 months ago, and he said, well, over nearly 2 years. I don't know why on earth he's got his facts wrong. But nevertheless, this is how it goes. I didn't attack at all. I was asked a question, and that was, were they good psychics? And I said, yes. And they said, what about mediums? I said, well, they're better psychics than they are mediums. Those were the words I said. But they put it all wrong, because the Psychic News wanted a story anyway, and they took it completely out of context and just said that I said that they were good psychics but not very good mediums, and left it at that, you see. So you see how a story can get distorted. So I read it and I thought, well, you know, let them get away with it. Well, I'm going to say this, ladies and gentlemen. I have friends that are very good psychics. I don't consider they're very good mediums. That doesn't mean to say that I'm pulling them to pieces. They want to be good psychics, that's fine. But I think it's far better in spiritualism to be good mediums. And there is a difference. Now, you are being taught this week various things. But I wonder if you know the difference between that is to the things of which the mediums do. I know you're being taught psychometry, but psychometry is not a mediumship gift. It's a psychic gift. You're being taught colour. Colour is not a spiritual gift. It's a psychic gift. It is to develop your awareness of these things. I do psychometry. I do colour readings. I do various other types of gifts as well, but they are not spiritual gifts, they're psychic gifts. You can be a darn good psychometrist, but you can be a rotten medium. It doesn't say you're not a good psychic, but it does say that you have put the emphasis onto the material things and not on the spiritual ones. Because you cannot be a medium until you have linked up with where mediumship comes from, and that is with the other world. The whole basis of mediumship is to prove that you are a living soul, and that death is only the death of the body. And it is to give you a spiritual purpose to your life. And what else? Well, the more mediums work spiritually, greater is heaven upon our earth. And greater is the link that comes with the higher forces that should be influencing us today, and they're not. The forces that are really using us today are obviously the evil forces rather than the good ones. Why? Well, ladies and gentlemen, you only have to look around. Every time you pick up a paper, there's a murder of some kind. That's not a spiritual thing. When we realize wars and torment and starvation, surely they are not spiritual things. They are things that are bringing out the worst in people because they have lost the whole point of life and God, and that is to link both the material and the spiritual together in a progressive thing. So that in the past, when the influence came from the spirit world, they did far better than we're doing today, when we have our dictators, when we have our presidents, doesn't include me, when we have our presidents, and when we have our prime ministers, all people considering what? Well, we've just had an idea of where we've been asking for the apartheid to be done away with and to bring force to see it go to pass. But everybody looks at the personal things and the material things that are involved rather than the sacrifices we should be making onto the spiritual level. Now, what is the easiest? Well, ladies and gentlemen, I can tell you this much. I would much prefer to be a psychic than a medium. That's the easiest thing in the world to do. But the responsibilities of being a medium are tremendous. And the implications of being one are tremendous. But to sit there and do a psychometical reading is the easiest thing you can do. And if you want a message, I can give you one right now, without any contact with the spirit world, and it'll be right. And I can give you all the things you want me to tell you, and you'll go away happier than if you sat with me as a medium. Because I would be telling you what's the best for you, whereas the psychic tells you what you want. Now, there's a very wide gulf between the two. And what we find, ladies and gentlemen, is that we are confused in spiritualism because we tend to put it all together. So tarot readings, card readings, crystal gazing, all these things are under the same umbrella, instead of saying those are psychic and these are spiritual gifts. And of course we have to know how to use them. Of course we have to know the difference. Because we have to know when we're telling you what you're asking us to tell you, rather than what really we are seeing as far as your future life is concerned. Because, ladies and gentlemen, only a medium can tell you the future. A psychic can't. Because a psychic can't see it or be aware of it, because they can only tell you the limit of your life up to now. Whereas the medium can tell you what is unfolding before you. And there's the difference. So we have to begin to understand all the time what we are dealing with. And when we go to development, the first thing you should be taught is to develop the power. And we don't. Anything that makes it easy. Instead of really putting, yes, we have to learn. I remember when I was very young, I was a marvelous medium. I really was. I thought I was marvelous. And people used to say I was. And I was, I suppose. But my mother didn't think so. She thought I was dreadful. And she used to say, where's your evidence? And I used to say, they said, yes. Oh, they'll say yes to you. You won't have to say your mother's with you, and even if she isn't your mother, they'll say, well, it's a mother figure. You know, isn't that how it goes on? Of course it does. But ladies and gentlemen, we have to learn When you begin, you are psychic. You're all psychic. There's not one of you that's not. And we can train you how to be psychometrists. We can train you how to do the tarot. We can train you how to use the this, that, and the other. But ladies and gentlemen, the first thing to remember being a medium is that you've got to learn the spiritual side of it, and you've got to learn how to use the powers of which you're going to develop in the correct order. So it's the spiritual side we should be concentrating on first, and the others will come up later. You have to know what you've received psychically, and we all do it. Of course we do. If you're going to be difficult with me, I'm going to give you a demonstration, I believe, tonight. And if you say no to me, I shall find the answer by tuning into you psychically and twisting it until I got it right. Simply because, ladies and gentlemen, many of you, a blank comes. And if I have a difficult meeting, I go all psychic. And I think, all right. I tune into you and tell you what you want to know. They say, yes, that's right. You see here? Straight away. Gives me time to tune into the spiritual thing of which you said no to. That I may be able to get onto a positive link to find out where you went wrong, not where I went wrong. Because if I receive it from the spirit world, I'm right, you're wrong. I've got to find the way of being able to guide it into the correct way. So where all our psychic powers are used. And if I have someone that comes in, you get them. Many times people will come if they're in trouble. In fact, many mediums will tell you. They'll say, first of all, we have a man that comes here. You'll say, now, first of all, I've no wife on the other side. I've no sweetheart. I've got a father passed away, but I don't want him. I've got a mother that's passed away, I don't want her. And the only way I want, and if you can't get this one, say straight away, I only want my sister. So you know where you are straight away. And if she doesn't come, you've had it. But that, what I mean, you see, ladies and gentlemen, now what are you going to do? What are you going to do? The man needs help. Of course he does. That's why he keeps coming to try and get into a contact with the other side. But we must also realize there are those that come that don't even want to know about those on the other side. They'd be horrified if you started to talk about them. But they need help. Once you mention the spirit, well, I don't want to know anything about that. But tell me about this. You see? All they want are psychics. But we have to realize they play their part in the correct way. But don't try to make them believe that you're going to convince them of spiritualism by being a psychic. You never will. The whole basis of spiritualism is to prove that you are a living soul and that death can't destroy it. Because if there is death, ladies and gentlemen, there's no God, there's no purpose to life, and spiritualism is just an absolute waste of time. But if for one moment there is one who has survived spiritually death and has proven it, then it goes for all of us. And that power, ladies and gentlemen, that is of God and of spirit that survives death is the same power that's flowing through you and me. And we've got to know more about it. And if you're going to go somewhere, you know if you're going on holiday. Do you mean to tell me that when you're going on holiday and you go abroad, you just sort of pick a pen, oh, I'll go there. Don't you want to know something about it? Of course you do. You want to know, first of all, what to wear, don't you? What sort of climate you're going to have. You've got all your preparations to get there. But when to many people, when about death, they'll say, oh, I'll wait until I get there. And when they get there, they're terrified. Simply because they're wondering whether it's true. And how many people have got 2 feet in the camp? There are Christians sometimes, a spiritualist the next, oh, just in case, I'll also be a Muslim. Or a Hindu, just in case. So whichever way it goes, if I'm reincarnated, that's fine. I knew all about it. If I'm not, and I awaken, well, now let's find out about it. I believed in God, and I believed in this, and I believed in the other, and I believed in everything else. Just to make sure. But the spiritualist, if you are one, should know exactly where you're going. Because, ladies and gentlemen, let's talk to them and find out what they've discovered. And I said only mediums and real investigators can really tell you about it. They always say when we ask them, what is it like to die? And their answer is, I didn't know I had. And that's it. How can you know when there's nothing final? You don't go to sleep. Because if you think you're going to go to sleep in the spirit world, oh, you are going to be in for a shock. Because you'll all at once find yourself there and you'll wonder why everybody's rushing around, all crying and all doing. And then you turn around and say, well, what's that body doing there? Until you look at it again. So, is that me? Because you find yourself awakened as such because you've never died. And everybody's now saying lovely things about you. They didn't mean half the things that they're saying, because they were saying terrible things about you before then. Isn't it nice to be able to sort of do that? But nevertheless, ladies and gentlemen, we learn that death is nothing. Why we worry about it like we do, I will never know. And we do. But as spiritualists, we should know it's only a stepping out and the shedding of this mortal shroud. That's all it is. It's the moving on, the progressive state, the moving to a higher life, the finish of the material life with the material senses. And those spiritual senses that now you're saying to yourself, oh, why didn't I go and sit? Why didn't I bother? Why? I've got to go through it all again now. Whereas we should have known about it because you came into it to find out the truth for yourself. And you didn't bother, so you've got it all to go through afterwards. But you've still got to learn the lessons you should have learned while you were here. Now that's what Spiritualism does for you. Now, if you're going to run about psyche to psyche to psyche to psyche, you're just the same as everybody else. You've no idea of what the truths of Spiritualism really are. And I wish in the movement of Spiritualism they would drop once and for all the word psychic. I'm fed up of hearing it. We have many of our well-known mediums standing up and saying, I'm a psychic. I don't know what I've got to be proud of. We're all psychic. There's nothing different about one psychic to another. But how different to say, I am a medium. What is a medium? A channel. That's all a medium is. A channel. And we work to make that channel good so the powers flow through. So that we can use our spiritual senses to be aware of the vital change that takes place. What is it? The change between that other body, the spirit body, and the physical one. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I'm looking at all you ladies, beautifully dressed, and the men, with all the other nice things on. And ladies and gentlemen, you've spent that on your body, haven't you? And then look what we spend on our body: eating, drinking, smoking, drugs. Cost a fortune. And what do you spend with your soul and your other body? We ask you to give a few minutes in meditation. We ask you to go to a class, to sit in the silence and learn how to use your consciousness onto higher levels. And what do? I want to be a medium. I'll come every week. I'll give you 6 months. And they sit. Now, I want results. Now, Mr. So-and-so, take this article. What do you feel? Feel this and that. Well, you're getting near it. When am I going to see the spirit world? Oh, it'll come gradually. The end of 6 months, I'm wasting my time, you know. I'll find another circle. So they go to another one and start all over again, going through the same thing, the same ritual, time and time again, getting nowhere, because they're demanding one of the most precious gifts without making any sacrifice whatsoever to get it. Now, if you're going to do well in your job, people have to study. They very often have to be an apprentice for so long and serve that apprenticeship. Oh, not in Spiritism. For some reason, you've got to learn it in so many lessons. And if you don't get the results, you'll make them. And if you come for 6 months, you want to be where everybody else is. I want to be like so-and-so, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. Just the same when they're healing, isn't it? They start coming in, but immediately you sort of feel that you're ready, and they don't let you say, oh, well, I'll try somebody else. So you go to another church and say, I'm a healer. And you go in and they say, oh, are you? Oh, well, see what you can do with this patient, see what you can do with that. Before you know where you are, you've gone off the track. Because the first thing, ladies and gentlemen, is to remember, it is developing the channel that is important. To develop that spiritual side of you, of realizing you must learn to give. You must learn to wait. Do you know, I was demonstrating when I was 10, really. I began my first demonstration when I was 12 on the public platforms. And I thought I was marvelous. I really did. I thought I was the new Messiah because I was so good. And everywhere I went, of course, there were queues trying to get in. It was lovely to sort of stand there. They all wanted to hear me. And I suppose they did. Curious more than anything else. I mean, someone so young. And they used to look up at me, and I must have been very angelic, because they always used to say yes. You know? I think they were terrified of saying no, in case it upset me. Mine does upset me if anyone says no, even today. But nevertheless, I'm preparing you for tonight. The point that is very important, though, ladies and gentlemen, I thought I was really good. And I remember demonstrating in Liverpool with Helen Swaffer, and that was a tremendous thing to be. I was 16 at the time. And they'd asked me to demonstrate for Helen Swaffer. And I thought I was marvellous. I really got places there. You know, there was, you know. He was the one that wouldn't have anybody. I mean, you had to be very careful, because he would come, if you didn't like you, say, they're not demonstrating with me. I'm not having him or her. So you had to be very on your best behaviour. And I remember I was really good that night. I really was good. I enjoyed it myself. I was so good. And when I came off, Ernest Oaten was there, and I thought, they're bound to tell me how good I was, you know. You know how we are. We love everyone to tell us how marvellous we are. And I came off, and they never said a word to me, you know. And I thought, they're jealous, you know. You know how you are. You know, it's true, isn't it? You're immediately sort of very suspicious about things like that. And because I really had a wonderful reception. Mind you, when I look back, I really wasn't very good. But nevertheless, they didn't. And I remember everybody was sort of saying how marvellous Hans Schaffer was, and he was. He was a brilliant speaker. I mean, he honestly, it was marvellous to follow him. I was never booked again, mind you. Yeah, it was the first and last time, so I don't think he liked me very much. But nevertheless, these were the words that Ernest Oaten said to me. He was chairing the meeting. You know, one day, you will be a very good medium. One day. I thought it already was one. But I have given a lifetime to spiritualism. Over 50 years. And what I know now would only cover the head of the plate. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, I've never forgotten it. He was right, you know. If we think we can know it all in so short a time, there seems to be no purpose to me about life. And when we are mediums, we seem to think immediately we take the platform, And immediately we start to give us, and we begin to get big meetings and bigger meetings and bigger meetings. We think we've got there. And we haven't now. Because we are ever, ever, ever still developing. And we've never stopped. And the only time we stop is when we cease to exist on a physical level. And then we find when we get across there, they tell us there's a lot more work to do. So we've never stopped. So, it behoves us to understand that if you think you're going to learn it in 6 months, in 12 months, in 5 years, and in 10 years, please go out of Spiritualism. Because you're not ready for it. The only time is when you realize you want to get better and better and better. And you learn from everyone you take. You learn something else. And ladies and gentlemen, that's the whole basis of everything. Now, the closer we can become with the spirit world, until our consciousness and theirs are on the same level, and those who are working with us are there to help us, then, ladies and gentlemen, you find that there is a tremendous purpose in life. And you don't need anyone to tell you whether there's a God or not. You know there is. Because you can find it deep within yourself. What Spiritism says to you, don't look at everything outside. They're only shadows of the real thing. Look first deep within yourself. And there you'll find the real truth. Within you and within me is a great spark which is of God. And that never goes out. And death is but a change from one experience to the next, and to the next, and to the next. Ever evolving, ever moving forward, ever developing stages of higher consciousness. And if you haven't found that or don't want it, Spiritism is no use to you. Find something else, because you're wasting your time. The real thing, ladies and gentlemen, is not just the message itself, but how important it is to live our life according to the laws of the Spirit. And if we have that power, it's that power that helps. You see, there is no God unless you create it. You do it. There's no form that you can go to, only to yourself. And if you want a prayer answered, you must prepare the way for the minds of the Spirit to work. And they will have to use other people, their hands, their voice, their loving, their giving, to answer it. Because God can't do it without you and me. Because God's only that power that brings things together. And if you have a look at your life properly, you'll find it. Some of you have heard the story, and I want to tell you about it. I had two people who came to me with a child that was handicapped in my own church. And he was going to die, this child. I knew that as a medium. I could not help them psychically, obviously, only as a medium. Then there are times when we wish we weren't a medium. I'd have loved not to have known. But always there, though I was helping, and I'm not a good healer, I don't profess to be. It is not of my work. The only time I say that there are other people better than me, and it's in healing. I mean that in the nicest way, but that is true. I will always take my hat off to other people. And as a healer, I'm not particularly good. But on diagnosing, I'm really one of the best. I know my job. I know it. And on that, I can do it. So I much prefer people come to me for a diagnosis rather than to come for healing, because I know I can do that better. So I always send them to other people in my own church. It's very rare I do healing. But this couple wanted me to do it. And so I said, well, all right, I will heal you. I'll do what I can. But you'd do far better if you had somebody else. And as I never work alone, I brought a young lady there that I knew was very good. And gradually, I just moved it across. It always went in. Because they said, if you only just touch it, that's all we want from you. It's a terrible responsibility. So I used to say, but you know, this healer's far better than me. Honestly, far better than me. But I could see the child was going to pass. And she'd already lost 3 children, so you can well imagine. It's a terrible tragedy. And they were only young, and such a delightful couple. Well, they used to say, oh, his mum is doing so well, oh, it's a miracle. And I used to say, oh, how can I tell them they're going to lose this child? Oh, God, please show a way. Well, they had to go into hospital. And the nurse that was going to give him his injections gave him the wrong one, and he died. Now, the point was, ladies and gentlemen, I wonder who was responsible for it, the nurse or did God, in a very mysterious way, get us to do that. You see, she prayed and saw results, and to her, she had faith. Was that faith to be tested? Or was it in some way God was going to work in a mysterious way, so as not to take away, because there's still something else to do with this story you had to learn. And I come to believe that God moves very mysteriously and knows exactly the right thing, that really for the right time is right for us. So I took the service, and it's a terrible thing to take a child's service. And I always insist in my own church, and I know a lot of you people don't believe it, I believe in memorial services. So if you belong to my church, you have to have one whether you want it or not, because I insist on it. And so I always insist they have memorial service, because this is the time, ladies and gentlemen, when we are in grief, and when we are in this grief, and that we are speaking about the person. Now is the time to speak about them as surviving. That's what the memorial service is for. It's to bring home to us that they are not dead, but walking by our side, and letting them witness the drawing aside of the veil, so that they begin to realize there is this wonderful opportunity for them now to show themselves to us, so that we are aware of their presence. Well, I looked at this lovely mother, and I could see that she was pregnant. You know, mediums get it in a funny way. And I thought, oh, I do hope she isn't pregnant. But I'm sure she is. And I thought, oh God, what on earth are you doing? So I went down and shook hands with her, and as I took her hand like that, I said, are you going to the doctor's, darling? So she said, oh, Mr. Higginson, do you think it's what I think it is? And so I said, well, I go to the doctor, you know, I can only tell you what I've seen or what I feel. So I said, but for heaven's sake, let me know. And so she rings up very excited, oh, Mr. Higginson, I'm going to have a child, but the doctors tell me I mustn't have it. So can I come and see you? And I said, oh, yes, you know, come and see me, bring your husband. And so I had them there to sort of, I heard a voice say, she must have this child, but she's going to lose it. And so the doctors had said she was not to have it, and I was told that she had to. They wanted to give her the operation to prevent her from having any more children. But the voice said she must have it. So I said, well, you're to have your child, dear. You must have it. Promise me you'll have the child. Don't let the doctors influence you in this. Please have it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I've never prayed so hard. She had the child, but of course it was stillborn. It was stillborn past. And she was very broken-hearted and about it. So she'd been to the doctors, and the doctor said, no more children. You must come in. So, of course, come to me. They always do come to me. And I insist they always come to me. And she said, but the husband and father, I said, go away and have another child. I heard a voice say, she must have a child, and this time it will live. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the difference between the psychic who wouldn't know to the difference between a medium who did know, there's a very big difference. And so they did. And the doctor said, you're wasting your time, this is ridiculous. This child will definitely be handicapped if it lives. Because there was something wrong, I don't know what you call it, but these technical things, that the two, the husband and wife, could never have children. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I prayed every night. And I said, God, I even lit so many candles in Catholic churches everywhere, and thinking, I rarely did anything, ladies and gentlemen. I promise you I did. I used to go and sit, and I used to sort of go off. My friend here knows that when I go to London, I go to the cathedral there, and I used to go just to sort of light a candle. I used to sort of put it there, and I say, oh, please, God, I've even come right to this church, just to sort of say, I'll do anything, if only you'll provide this answer. It's got to be right. Got to be right, got to be right, must be right, it must be right. I know I'm right, I know I'm right. Please, God, please help me. Please help her. Well, ladies and gentlemen, they have a daughter. And she's living. And she's lovely. So they brought her to us to be named. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you are young and you have children, promise me you won't have them christened. Always have your child named. Why? You can't have life without God. You as a family only provide the body. The soul is there, that's God's. When you have a child, you couldn't have it unless God has ordained you will. Try as you will, as the case of these two people. They couldn't have a child. But somewhere a voice said you will. And yet, you see, you then turn to the church to be christened in water, to do away with the sin of having it. To cleanse it from having it. I think it's an insult. An insult to life. So in spiritualism, we name. We bring them to us. What for? Because, ladies and gentlemen, the child that you have is known to be coming long before you know about it. And when they arrive here, they already come under the power of a name, which throughout history has always been. And they belong to that great mind, that great power of which they belong. Now, when this little girl was brought to me to be named, because I said, she's got to be named, don't take her to the church. You must bring her to our church. We'll name her. We had a marvelous service. I think they came from everywhere. They brought all their great cousins, people they'd never met for years had to come, to this sort of wonderful realization. It was like a miracle, you see here, that they were having this child. But then when the name came, she was named Emma. I heard a voice say, I send to you a lily of my fields. From henceforth she will be known as Emma, but a lily of the field. And that's on her naming certificate. And when I asked about it, they said, their life was barren. There was nothing there. So I sent the power to bring forth a flower. So when everything else failed, ladies and gentlemen, and all the doctors, all the specialists said, no, the great power said, she's still to come. And that's the one that tried 3 times to get here and couldn't. The same soul. So, ladies and gentlemen, there is a power. Spiritualism gives us truths, and if we look at it and study it and look behind the scenes, we see we have something that no one else has yet seen and discovered. It isn't just those little things that are the messages, it's the power behind it that makes it possible. Spiritualism brings to you a living God, not one that's far away from you, but something that when we link with it is beyond all our thinking. When everything else fails, this power proves itself. And that is why, ladies and gentlemen, there's always a purpose for us to understand. And as spiritualists, we should endeavor to be and use our mediums correctly and properly, and our movement correctly and properly, to establish the way of life that was intended, that we will stop and listen to the voice of God. And when we do, we hear it. It comes from those greater minds who are working to bring about a great love upon our earth. And spiritualism is the movement that can do it, as long as we put everything into its correct order and build a power that can come to our help and need when everything else fails. Now, ladies and gentlemen, look what's happening to the world. Is there going to be all this that we fear? Is South Africa going to be a bloodbath? Will Russia come to press the button and blow us up? Will America do it? Will the wars in the Middle East still keep going on? Will all these be deaths in Ireland? And is it coming here? Nearly every country in the world has this fear. Why? Because, ladies and gentlemen, we have lost the art of true living. We allow only the material things to matter. And we've lost that contact with the real depth of the power of the Spirit. And you and I should be privileged and should feel it a privilege to have been chosen by the Spirit world to come together. And in our own small way and humble way, move forward. While everything else is receding, we must keep moving on, fighting the powers that are bringing the darkness to our earth by keeping our link with the Spirit world. So when you sit in your circles, don't just think, I want to develop this and I want to develop that. Give some time of allowing yourself to become a channel whereby the power of the Spirit can flow through and for a while find its level here, that the great minds of the Spirit can work and influence and bring about the vital changes where there will come peace and goodwill towards people. It is not a dream. It must become a reality. It's not something that we are just preaching without fact. We are a progressive state when barriers must go, when divisions must go, and when we should be able to see that all people that come to this earth come for a reason, and without God they could never be. And our aim must be to unite with the Spirit world and keep it there. And though psychism can play its part, let spiritualism be the real thing. Let us follow in the footsteps of our great seers and our great pioneers and work only for those who have chosen us as their channels to feed the people with spiritual food. Then we shall see a change. Mind you, I'm continually writing to Mrs. Thatcher, and she continually ignores them now. She used to send a little reply, but now she doesn't. But then I still keep writing to her, and because I believe we are right, and I believe that if you have confidence in what you believe, then you must put it into operation. And I think we know, ladies and gentlemen, that spiritualism began, modern spiritualism, to take us through to the new age that is dawning. The golden age, the spiritual age, the age when all this will vanish away, and we are there to take us through it. That's what spiritualism is for, is to help mankind to establish itself in the correct order. And the danger, ladies and gentlemen, if there has ever been a danger before, it's with us now. And spiritualism must rise in its people to bring about this great bridge that links all things together. Why? We all came the same way. God was with all of us. The same power, the same soul that was there all the time that God gave to us, ladies and gentlemen, is with us now. Always has been and always will be. So let us look inwards. That's where spiritualism takes us. Begin with yourself and let that power develop within you. And in your development, take that spiritual part of you and let it come out. Then you'll hear a voice. Then you'll know what it's all about. Because what you see won't be your imagination with so many things. It'll be too clear for that. Much too clear. And what's more, ladies and gentlemen, when you hear a voice, you will know you hear it. It will sound through your being. Oh, not like Mrs. Doris Dick says she hears it with her ear. It's another type of voice. Doris is wrong. What you get, ladies and gentlemen, is the voice fills you. And everything responds to it. It's a voice that comes right within. It's a spiritual one. It's only when your spiritual senses are in tune with it that you get it. Nothing to do with your ears. You can't hear the spirit world through your ears. It sounds. You can't see the spirit world with your eyes, can you? Of course you can't. It's another vision altogether. And what we have to bear in mind, if you are trying to look for the spirit world through your eyes, you're wasting your time. You'll never see. The great test of what you see is close them. Close your eyes. And if you are seeing something with your eyes open, and it is spiritual, it will be just as clear when your eyes are shut. And when you hear the voice of the Spirit, put all into your ears, and ladies and gentlemen, you'll still hear it. Because it has nothing to do with your ears. It is one that is beyond them. Why? Because it continues beyond death. And when you die, your ears die. Your eyes are closed to it. But you open vision unto the spiritual, because it is a sight that's always there. And that's what the medium, I wish they'd get rid of this. And that's, you could say to you, who's there? And it would answer. Give two little sort of pushes there. Yes, what's wrong with it? Is it just cracked or something? Well, it's worse, yes. Well, ladies and gentlemen, what I wanted to put across to you, first of all, is this. That Spiritualism's message is for the whole of the world and the mankind. And once we have learned that there is the Word, then we also belong to the universe. We don't just belong here. We belong to the whole of life. Spiritualism links us together and never breaks this. And all of us learn that without God, we would not be here. And who is God? God is Spirit. That's it. So therefore, when we talk of Spirit, we're talking of this great power. And without that great power, you wouldn't be here. It's always said by the great philosophers that if God, the Spirit, withdrew all the power of the Spirit, the whole of this would go into nothing. There'd be nothing left. For it is that power and that power alone that brings the whole into life. So you should be indeed grateful. And indeed know that God has blessed you with that life. And do all you possibly can to keep a companionship between the two. So when next you sit in your class, learn two things. Your mind is important because you have a mind divided into what I call the supermind, many call the subconscious mind. I prefer to call it the supermind. And the lower mind, which is to do there with your consciousness itself. So that your consciousness, ladies and gentlemen, which has to do with your mind, and the vehicle that is used for that is your brain, so that you have feeling and sense of feeling. When you are sitting, it is to remember that though you are sitting and you need to keep that link between your body and yourself, in sitting in any spiritual way, whether it is for mediumship or in meditation, you learn to let go of that, to quieten it. So you train yourself so that your senses on a physical level will not disturb you. So that you learn to be very tranquil, very silent, so that you can control your own senses. But the next thing that you must learn, and of which many people seem to concentrate very much here, is to let go of that. There's no need to do that. The thing you have to learn to control is, first of all, ladies and gentlemen, your superconsciousness. And your superconsciousness and your solar plexus are the two things that are important. So that all mediums know that the whole seat of all spiritual feelings comes through the solar plexus. So therefore, what you are learning to do is to become sensitive and to become active with your feeling. And your feelings, ladies and gentlemen, that you feel here will just trigger through your subconscious mind and bring to you great realities. So we learn that the brain is that which is used by the conscious mind onto the things of which are now, and that the super mind, which people have called the subconscious mind, is used through the solar plexus so that you can get this feeling onto all the things of which you take. In other words, it's action. So therefore, you close down your thoughts and feelings onto the conscious state, and you open up onto the unconscious state, or onto the super, where the action will come. So it is to learn how to get your feelings right, and move away from the earthly things onto the other things, and it becomes very active. People do not do that. They tend to concentrate here, and they never learn how to get the real feeling in the presence of the Spirit. If you are learning spiritualism and you are learning mediumship, always remember it is to build. It is to be aware of the presence, so that you begin to feel that love. That's where it comes. So you have to learn, when you're sitting, to have that feeling, that awareness, so that you can build it. And as you build it, so instead of talking about them, you're so close with it, it's pouring through you. It becomes a very different thing. See, if your mother's there, then for heaven's sake, let your mother come. Don't say, was your mother this? Is your mother that? Does your mother do this? Was your mother this? You're talking about something that was rather than is. Your mother is here. The medium should feel it. Many of you say, I don't feel the presence. Then your development is in the incorrect order. You should feel it first and get the contact with it afterwards. Because you must get it related. You don't talk of something as though it's been. You talk of something that it is. And you must learn how to open up correctly so you sense it, feel it, are aware of it. And when you do, then your sitting, ladies and gentlemen, will mean more to you than anything else. I'll tell you why. I always remember when I used to have to sit. I used to have to sit 3 times a week in circles. And I do know, weeks couldn't come quick enough for me. I used to love it. And ladies and gentlemen, to feel one presence and know it is better than 12 months sitting and not being very sure. That one, you will never forget it. And that goes on each week or should. So that when you are sitting, you all at once are aware. What have you done? You've got rid of your physical senses, and now you're on to that super sense of feeling, the presence. Because you've let go of your physical senses, and now you're on to the greater sense, which is on to the higher level, the super level, and you begin to sense it. And all people I've trained, I always make them sense and feel before I ever ask them, what have they got? So they know. And every week when you're going to sit, it should be a joy to go and know you're going to have this wonderful feeling. And that develops. Until all at once there it appears before you. The vision opens itself. You don't have to force it. It's a natural vision. You're aware of it, you see it, you know it. And now you've got it, you've got to learn how to describe it. And that's where everybody falls down. Have you ever tried to describe love? Have you ever tried to describe to a woman that's lost her child? The child is there. You try it. It's terribly difficult. But once you've got it, you find the tears come, the joy comes, and all at once you've so got it that the person watching you gets it as well. You brought it together. And that's what the medium does. You bring it together. So that when they go away, my son came. That's all you want. The medium was the link, the power. They did it. The spirit world is right here now, but the medium has to do it and make it come to life. It's dead until you do. But you do it. And that's what you sit for. To make it vibrate. So that you go away and know you are in the presence of angels. That's better than anything else. Try it.
Well, that's how it's done in one easy hour. Now, would anyone like to ask Gordon a question? or tell him how he can improve his mediumship.
I'm always willing to listen. But I accept it as a little matter.
That's it.
Yes.
Would anyone like to ask Gordon a question? Because if he's going to demonstrate this evening, then you'll have to answer his questions. Oh, there's one Cohen. Yes, that's right. Harry first of all, then. Harry? The Cohens are back in the country again.
Yes.
One of the points that you made was this about psychics and how they are sometimes linked. Now, don't you find sometimes that the media, and perhaps unconsciously ourselves, cause spiritualism to be guilty by association? Because they purposely link us with all sorts of other movements, sometimes movements that we don't ourselves approve of. So that people say, if they are with them, then I'm against them, so I must be against spiritualism.
Mm. Yes, I think that is something that does happen. I'm not quite clear. What movements are you referring to mostly?
Well, basically, I mean, I don't necessarily disagree with all of them myself, but they will sometimes link us with, say, astrology, or they will link us with, say, some other form of activity that we don't all agree with. And therefore, people who are against, possibly don't believe in astrology, will say, well, if they're like them, then
I see what you mean.
What I mean? It's a media trick sometimes.
Yes, I think really that where we go wrong with astrology is not that astrology, all spiritualists should accept astrology, but the spiritual implications of astrology, which are very important. We tend to look upon astrology as fortune-telling, which isn't. That has nothing to do with astrology at all. Astrology, in actual fact, is to do with life, and we are involved in it, very much so, for the simple reason that if you are to be born at a certain time, which we know we are, what happens at that particular period, you have to be born at that particular period to provide the particular body which your parents give, and also the particular sort of signs that come from the particular planets. But you see, the point with all this, when you study it, is that every person's life, even people that are born within probably seconds of each other like twins, yet their whole lives are completely different. They have certain implications. I think it's when we probably talk more of astrology than we talk about spiritualism. I believe various things about astrology which I've accepted over many years. But it is what I call the spiritual side of it. I can see your point that in various movements, such as reincarnation movements, for example, that we can confuse people by preaching first of all spiritualism, then reincarnation, without really thinking that we are causing people to have doubts and also to be confused in their thinking. Therefore, we should leave alone what we can't prove and only talk of the things we can, so that it links up with the sort of basis of the movement and the foundation of the movement, so we don't rock it. Yes, I think that we can cause a great deal of problems, and therefore I think that what we should be doing as a movement is studying other movements and to see what we can accept and what we can't, and therefore make it clear where we stand, which we haven't done. We tend to draw a line and say that is it, or we tend to let people creep in. I mean, I must say that I'm a bit perturbed when we get people, and you see, many people who believe in reincarnation seem to always have, you know, the most famous people in history. Yes, and it seems to me that the life they're living now is worse by far than the life that they lived before. And it seems to be a retrograde step rather than a progressive step, so I can't accept that. And then, of course, when people do wrong today, it's always their karma. They seem to push everything onto poor old karma. And I think we've got terribly confused because we allow people with very little knowledge, to actually, it's like trance, isn't it? Today, I mean, people say about obsession and possession. In fact, we have people who come to us as mediums, and they've committed terrible wrong. I mean, they think nothing of rape today, and then they say, well, it wasn't me, I've just got this evil spirit with me. And so the poor spirit world is getting blamed for everything. And many people use it always incorrectly, and it's just because we don't go sufficiently in it ourselves. And I think that that is really where we fail as a movement, because we never come back and put up a case, because our case hasn't been strong enough to really be put forward. We've been inclined to limit spiritualism to what it is, rather than be able to make a stand and look at these things and say, well, in part, or various things, but a lot of things are taken out of context anyway. And that's to make a study. I think we should have a group of people that will make a study of all these things and give us all their findings after a great deal of study. And until we've got that, I don't think we're going to get very much right. So I do agree with you. It's like tarot reading, isn't it? You see, although there are some very good tarot readers, it doesn't prove spiritualism. It's an ancient thing. I saw a while ago some people using, in fact, where I was in Germany when I was having treatment, and one of the young ladies there was Chinese, and I met her, and she used the cards, and she also used you picked something out of a bag, and I forget what they call them, and she would give what was it? Stones, yes. Rune, that's it, yes. And she seemed to be quite good, but when she was very, very good, she sort of sometimes was very, very bad as well. I mean, they were right sometimes if the person seemed to fit, but when it was really wrong, it was right out, you know. There was no question of it being a sort of a steady correctness. There seemed to be a lot of things that were quite right. And yet it was a very ancient thing that had been done thousands of years in China. And so I think we have to be very careful how we use them. But I think we should be able to know sufficient about it to say something about it. And I can't say anything about it because I don't know anything about it. I'm just amazed sometimes when it comes right. I wonder how they got right. But nevertheless, but I do agree with you. I think we do tend, and it's the same, of course, with the Sai Baba movement. Some of the things that go there can be right, but a lot of things can be very wrong. It's a question of what we believe. I don't believe that that anybody can be God completely, because it does away with the spirit teachings that God is in everything. Yet there are those that believe that he is that. And I think there is something wrong, really, in a teaching if you come to accept that. I'd like to feel that I'd been Moses, but I'm not good enough, because I like Moses. And I'm very fond of St. Francis of Assisi, two of my favourites. And I'd like to feel that I was reincarnated, but you can't have that if someone sees something in the spirit world. I mean, how can you have me be it, or anybody else be it, and yet they're still in the spirit world, coming back, you know? Confusion, but there's a lot of it.
We're going to do something straightforward then, shall we? What's your question? Your question won't be confusing, will it? No, that's all right.
If we are invited into a circle, and you are aware that there are disharmonies existing between members on a normal, natural, human level, should we rise above it and become masters of our own destiny and enter that circle, even if, well, no, that's the wrong way around. If it is the only circle that is available to us at that time, then should we go in knowing that we have our own protection and our own love, and therefore the disharmony can not affect us because we could rise above it by inviting our own love?
Yes, you can. The only thing that one has to remember is that certain people in their sort of everyday life, it becomes really a part of their makeup. And when they sit, even with mediums that tune into them, we can find it very difficult. So I can't see how, if that disharmony is in the circle, I wouldn't feel that you're going to get very far. Ultimately, you will have to pull out, because always there must be harmony Inasmuch, you see, I always believe that humility is the foundation. When people can sort of forget themselves and come down to that state of real humility and loving. People that go into circles should, first of all, which I say, if they're going to go into a circle, they should be trained, first of all, how to get rid of all that first, because you can't have it. I have a good method. Before people come into circles, of which you're talking about, I think that they should go in beginners' circles first, right from a beginner's class. And they're taught what some of the things about spiritualism. You can't teach all about spiritualism, but you can give them rough ideas. Then I think people should be taught how to sit in meditation, quiet for a while, in other words, a passive circle. Meditation is really the wrong word to use, I think. But you need a circle of quiet where people can learn concentration, because concentration is so vital before you begin sitting, so that you can collect your thoughts and you can guide them. Now, if you can get into a circle of where you find that there are people that are not, so earthy that they create conditions that aren't too good. If they've been in those circles and they've been trained to guide their thoughts, then they would have dropped all those thoughts before they come in, and you would have a much better feeling. I think it's people going right to a circle without being trained to go to that circle, you see here. And I think it is the wrong way around. Because going back to my mother, she was a very hard teacher. My mother believed in discipline, and she would never waste your time. She was a woman, if she felt that she was wasting her time, she'd tell you. She'd say, look, you're wasting my time, I'm wasting yours. Let us part friends, but I'd rather you not come. You see, that's how she'd sort of be. And I found that always to be very good. I mean, I'd come into the circle, my own circle, and I've had a very bad day, and my mother just said to me, you're not sitting tonight. And she wouldn't have me. And I used to cry like anything. I used to think my mother was being awful. And it wasn't until years later I realized that she was correct. If you come to a class to be taught spiritual things, then let us get those spiritual things right first. And learn to be able to, with our concentration, to get rid of them. So that when we are trained to go into the circle, then we can let go of the things that are going to be a hindrance, not only to ourselves, but to everybody else that's there. I think it's a question of training. I think it's a question of people taking their time, so that we really do get it right. Well, my mother used to get it, just before you have to rush off, my mother used to make us, my mother would never come to the circle until right on time. She would never come anywhere near to us until it was the time to sit. But we had to be there half an hour before we were to sit. So when we sat at 7:30, we had to be there by 7 o'clock. And we would chatter. She used to say to you, now be friendly. So we used to all sit. And we all used to bring sweets. And we used to all pass our sweets around. And by the time we got a bag of all sorts, you know. So we had one of everybody else, pass them round. And it was rather strange. We all seemed to choose different ones. And we were very, very friendly. My mother always believed that friendship and feeling was vital to sitting. So she always insisted for half an hour we got to know each other. And we got friendly and happy. She used to like us to laugh, She used to love us to laugh and joke and really have fun. But at 25 past, we had to be in our seats. And by that time, there had to be absolute quiet. So that when she came in at 7:30, her seat was waiting and we were already there. And ladies and gentlemen, it absolutely went absolutely marvelous. It was something we looked forward to every week. And we were never late because we wanted to have a chat about this and a chat about that and do this and do that. And we were all so friendly that it really was a vital sort of moment. And that half an hour was equally as important to the hour that followed. And we had to finish right on time. So there it was. See, never more than an hour. As soon as the hour was over, it was over. cup of tea?